Yui was an ordinary girl who thought her father was sending her to live with relatives until she found a soulless boy on a couch who suddenly grabbed her and started licking her neck. Little did she know she had just become prey to 6 vampire brothers. However, before any of this, Yui arrives at a mysterious mansion where it starts raining, so she quickly knocks on the door, but it opens on its own. Inside, she wonders if someone is there because she finds the mansion empty except for a boy sleeping on a couch. Yui tries to wake him up, but when she touches his hand, she realizes that he is cold, so she checks his pulse, but then she finds out that he has no pulse. However, Yui quickly takes out her phone to call for help, but then the boy wakes up and snatches her phone. Suddenly, the boy pushes her on the couch and starts licking her like a thirsty freak. Just then, another guy arrives and calls the boy by name Ayato. The man turns out to be Reiji, who tells Ayato to play in his room instead of doing it in entrance hall. Afterward, Reiji asks Yui who she is, and then she introduces herself and tells him that her father said that she was supposed to live here. However, Reiji and Ayato have no idea what she is talking about, and later they all sit in lounge. There, another guy appears and gets excited to see a human girl after a long time, but then he starts licking her. Afterward, another guy also licks her, but Reiji tells them to stop, but Ayato also interferes and tells them that he saw her first, so he wants to be her first time. Just then, another guy named Subaru arrives and gets furious because his sleep is ruined. Afterward, Yui tries to walk away, but Reiji tells her to stop as he wants to verify something. Just then another boy named Shu tells them that he knows about Yui as some guy contacted him the other day and said they will have a guest, so they should treat her with respect. Afterward, Reiji introduces everyone and says that they are all brothers. Seeing them, Yui gets scared and tries to contact her father, but Ayato steals her phone and then Subaru breaks it. Afterward, Leto and Kanado start acting like Diddy and touch her, which freaks her out. She tries to run but falls and injures her leg. Yui then sees their scare faces and takes her cross-locket out to protect herself, but they all think she is foolish for thinking that vampires can be stopped with that. Hearing that, Yui quickly runs away from the room but finds Kanado on her way again. She finds a telephone, but the wire is cut, and right then Leto shows up again and starts acting weird with her, making her feel even more nervous. She runs as fast as she can until she reaches the mansion and tries to open the door, but Ayato appears in front of her to stop her. Yui pushes him away with all her strength and quickly runs upstairs without looking back. After that, she notices one of the rooms is open, so she rushes inside and sees some jewelry lying around. When she walks closer to the window, she sees a girl standing there, which makes her freeze in shock. Yui blinks and looks again, but the girl disappears and is gone like she was never there. On the floor, Yui finds a picture from her childhood, and right next to it she sees her father's diary, where she learns that she is not really his daughter but was adopted. Just then, all of the vampires come into the room together, and instead of helping, they surround Yui and call her their prey. Sometime later, Yui wakes up inside a room, and the first thing she does is check her body to see if she got bitten during the night, but she finds out that she didn't. Even so, she gets scared when she notices that her clothes are different now and realizes the vampires might have been the ones who changed them while she was asleep. At that moment, Leto suddenly shows up sitting on her bed and says that she looks like a baddie in the outfit she has on. Leto then starts crawling toward her in a playful way, but Ayato shoves him aside and tells him that she belongs to him and is his nut. Right after that, Reiji walks into the room and tells Yui that she has to change her clothes because she needs to go to school. Yui answers that it is already too late for school, but Reiji explains that she will be going to night school since they cannot let her stay active in the daytime just because she still follows the normal thinking of a mortal. He also tells her that she has to adjust to their lifestyle as long as she lives with them. After everyone leaves her, Yui takes her pendant out and thinks that she can use this chance to go to the room where she found the journal. Just as she tries to sneak outside, she finds Ayato standing there asking if she is not changing yet. Later, Yui goes to school with the vampire brothers in their limousine and wonders if all of them are brothers. She also realizes that they don't talk to each other at all, but then Ayato starts calling her pancake. Seeing that, Reiji tells Ayato to do that stuff in his own room and gives Yui cranberry juice to cure her weak blood. Afterward, they arrive at school where Reiji tells Yui that she is in same class as Ayato and Kanado, so she should go with them. As Yui goes to her class, she sees it's food prep time, so Ayato orders her to make takoyaki. However, Yui makes takoyaki for Ayato, and after eating it, he bites Yui and drinks her blood. Ayato gets amazed at how sweet her blood tastes, and then he continues drinking her blood until she pushes him away. Just as she is about to faint, Reiji comes and tells him that he never imagined he would do this in school too. After a while, Yui wakes up in the swimming area, but then Ayato suddenly grabs her and throws her right into the pool. He tells her to say that he is the best and that nobody else is better than him, but Yui struggles to stay above the water and almost ends up drowning as she tries to move. When Ayato looks at her fighting in the water, he gets a sudden memory of himself drowning the same way and begging for someone to help him. Because of this, Ayato jumps into the pool and pulls Yui close, then kisses her before starting to drink her blood again like before. Later, Yui goes back to the strange room to find the journal once more, but when she opens it this time, all the writing inside has fully disappeared and the pages are completely blank. Later that night, everyone sits together at the table for dinner and they all enjoy their food, but Yui is the only one not eating anything. At that moment, Leto shows up and asks her why she isn't eating, saying that she needs to eat properly or she might end up becoming anemic. Reiji tells Leto that it is very rude to disturb someone while they are at the table. Shu suddenly leaves the room and this makes Reiji furious because he thinks Shu is nothing more than a spoiled brat who doesn't respect the rules. Meanwhile, Kanado starts acting in a creepy and insane way as he begins stabbing his food over and over again like a psychopath. Soon after, everyone else leaves the dining room, but Reiji stops Yui before she can go and tells her that her table manners are truly terrible, warning her that one of these days he will discipline her very strictly. Yui quietly answers that she understands what he is saying. Later that night, Yui is sitting in her room and she takes out her father's diary to find that the pages are still blank and that the photograph is her only clue. Then, Ayato appears in her room again and asks what she is doing, but she asks him why he's in her room and he tells her that he can go wherever he wants and demands to suck her blood. However, Yui says that she needs to go to the washroom, but Ayato starts kissing her neck and tells her that he will not suck her blood anymore because he does not want to deal with her fainting again. After saying this, Ayato leaves, and Yui looks at her neck in the mirror to check the kiss marks he left behind. When she turns around, she is shocked to see Shu sitting inside the bathtub with all of his clothes still on. Yui wonders to herself why he is bathing fully dressed, but Shu tells her to undress him since she might secretly be hoping to watch him take off his clothes. Yui quickly answers that she only came here because she wanted to take a bath, but Shu asks her if she wants to join him in the tub instead. Yui thinks for a moment that even though they are all brothers, each one of them is so different in personality. Shu then explains that it is because they all have different mothers. He also reveals that Reiji and he share the same mother, while Ayato, Kanado, and Leto are triplets who came from another mother. Afterward, Shu pulls Yui to the bathtub and asks her if he wants to drink her blood. While drinking Yui's blood, Shu says that her blood feels so hot that it could almost burn him. After this happens, Yui returns to her bedroom and finds Ayato waiting for her on her bed, ready to drink her blood again. She tells him that it is not a good time, but Ayato ignores her words and is about to bite her until he notices the fresh bite mark already on her neck. Because of that, he takes her to the game room where Shu is, and Ayato angrily asks if Shu is trying to pick a fight with him. Shu just looks at him and tells him to keep his voice down. Ayato, still frustrated, challenges Shu to play a game of darts, but Shu says that it is way too much trouble for him and shows no interest in the challenge. Afterward, Leto shows up and tells both of them that whoever wins the game will get Yui as the prize. A few moments later, Leto announces to everyone that if Shu makes the next dart shot, then Yui will belong to Shu. Yui thinks to herself that this whole thing is insane and tries to run away, but Leto stops her and says that prizes have to stay still until the game is over. Shu then throws his final dart and makes the shot, which means he wins the game, and this makes Ayato furious. Shu doesn't even take Yui with him though and starts walking away, but Leto suddenly shoves her forward so that she falls right into Shu and crashes into him. Shu then turns back to face Yui and tell her coldly that mortals are nothing more than prey for vampires to feed on, and she should already know this by now. The next day at school, Yui tries to call someone on the phone, but Kanado suddenly appears out of nowhere and tells her that the reason he is at school right now is because his teddy bear is thirsty. Yui tries to calm him down and says that she will bring him something to drink, but when she comes back and offers him a cup of coffee, Kanado gets angry and throws it straight onto the floor. He yells that he only likes sweet things and hates bitter things, so he will never drink it. Yui tells him that this is not a good reason to throw it on the floor, but Kanado scolds her harshly and says that she should never talk back to him and that she is completely worthless. Yui apologizes to him and nervously asks what he really wants from her. Kanado just says that she needs to think about that on her own. After that, Kanado walks away, and Yui also steps outside but ends up finding Leto talking to himself. However, Leto notices her right away, slams her against the wall, and tells her that vampires always become thirsty on nights like this. Afterward, Leto bites Yui on the neck, but she manages to run away into the street where she finds a telephone booth and quickly calls her father for help. To her shock, Leto is the one who answers from the other side of the line, making her realize she cannot escape him. Soon after, Leto catches her again, but then he hears a news report about a politician named Tugo Sakamaki, who turns out to be the father of Reiji, Shu, Ayato, Kanado, and himself. Right at that moment, Yui suddenly faints, and when she opens her eyes, she is back in her bedroom before heading out to a nearby church. There, Yui prays and asks God about her father, but Leto appears behind her and tells her that asking God is pointless since he will never give her an answer. Yui is shocked that Leto seems to know everything about her, so she asks him if he knows anything about her father. Instead of giving a clear answer, Leto ignores her question and tries to do unholy things to her, but Yui resists and pushes him away. Afterward, Leto tells Yui that God is nothing more than something created by humans and that there is really nothing worth believing in. Later, he forcefully pushes Yui down and asks her to guide and instruct him. Yui quickly says that he cannot do something like this inside a church, but Leto replies that she can be angry all she wants, yet she will never be able to fight against him. He tells her that she will be made to submit to him completely and that she will only exist at his mercy. Leto then begins to undress her and even licks her skin, but Yui refuses and says that she will never give in to him no matter what. After hearing that, Leto tells her that she was actually offered to them as a sacrifice by the very same church where she is praying now. Yui says she does not believe his words, but Leto presses her harder by asking who she really thinks was the one that sent her to them in the first place, yet Yui still denies what he is saying. Later, Yui goes outside and starts looking after some roses when Kanado suddenly shows up and tells her to pick the roses and follow him. Kanado leads Yui all the way to a graveyard, and she asks him why they are there. Kanado answers that graveyards are filled with deep darkness and carry the heavy smell of death. He then says that he loves graves because they are quiet and cold, before revealing that his mother passed away. When Yui asks if his mother really passed away, Kanado replies that he was actually the one who killed her and then asks if she would believe him if he said that. After this, he tells Yui to place the roses on the grave, and once she does, she quickly tries to leave, which makes Kanado furious. He yells that she is selfish because he went out of his way to invite her here, yet she tries to leave the second something does not please her. Afterward, he snatches the roses and starts smashing the bouquet against the grave in a wild rage until Yui begs him to stop, and he finally does. Right after that, he warns her never to give him orders and calls her a pathetic mortal. As Kanado begins walking toward her, Yui panics and tries to step back, but she stumbles and falls down. Kanado then starts having his maniac episode and tells her to cry as much as she wants, and only then will he think about forgiving her. Afterward, Kanado then goes on top of Yui and almost bites her but then stops. He says that he forgets that if mortal women are given a kiss before they're pleasured. She asks what he is talking about and says that women are a pain and then bites her. However, Yui tells him to stop because it's hurting her, so he stops and moves his hand around her hair before biting her football. Later that night, Yui walks back to the mansion in miserable condition when a guy named Richter watches her. Subaru then asks what he is doing here and it turns out Richter is his uncle. Meanwhile, Yui walks towards her room but hears some noise, so she goes to another room and finds Reiji having bad sleep. Yui tries to touch him, which wakes him up. She then asks if this is his laboratory and asks if anyone else uses it like Shu. As soon as Yui mentions Shu's name, Reiji says that just hearing that name makes his ears feel dirty. Yui asks him why he hates Shu so much, but Reiji tells her that she doesn't need to know the reason. He then walks over to the window, and a flashback appears showing a younger Reiji secretly watching Shu and their mother from the hallway window. Back in the present, Reiji suddenly turns to Yui and says that, as a rare exception, he will prepare tea for her. However, when Yui tastes the tea, she quickly drops the cup in shock. After that, Reiji hands her another drink instead, but as soon as she takes it, Yui collapses to the ground and hurts her hand. Right after that, Reiji forces himself onto Yui, holding her down as he drinks her blood. Later, Kanado begins singing a weird song on the edge of the rooftop when Yui asks why she is singing a song here. Yui tells him that it's dangerous, but instead of getting down, Kanado says that her anxiety expression on her face looks cute. However, he then adds that he hates that looking on her face as it makes him worry why she is so afraid of him. Yui says that she isn't afraid of him now because she's only afraid that he'll fall. He says that she doesn't have a clue how conceited that makes her. She then asks if it's wrong to worry, and Kanado says that he doesn't need her to worry, then asks if she really wants him off the ledge that badly. When she says yes, Kanado says that she should give him a kiss because if she does, he'll be happy to come down, but if she can't, she should just leave him alone and get lost. Hearing that, Yui starts thinking, which makes Kanado laugh as he says that she is really a hopeless stupid girl. Kanado then stands on the edge and then he falls to the ground. Afterward, Yui goes down and asks Kanado if he is alright, but he calls her annoying and says this kind of tiny jump can't harm him. Seeing him, Yui asks if he really wants to die, and Kanado says he does, but not right now. Kanado then tells her that he wants to take her to a different place today. When they arrive in the place, it is a room filled with weird dolls in wedding dresses and Yui asks what they are. He tells her that those are wax figures and Yui says that she's never seen one before. Kanado then says that Yui can be as beautiful as Silent Corpse and asks if she wants to be like them right now. Hearing that, Yui gets scared and then she tries to run away but Kanado slams her to the wall. He then starts licking her face and tells her all the techniques he would use to sew her body and make her a beautiful doll. She then assumes what these figures are really and Kanado says that she's right and that these are the sacrificial brides before telling her that he'll make her more comfortable soon before strangling her. He strangles her until Ayato calls him and says Reiji wants to see him. Afterward, Yui goes back to mansion where she runs into Subaru who tells her that she will die if she stays here and tells her to go now. Afterward, Yui returns to her room and begins packing all of her belongings, but when she notices her father's picture, she changes her mind and decides to stay so she can uncover the truth. Later, Yui goes to Subaru and asks him if he knows anything about her or about her father, telling him that she heard she was offered to the vampires as a sacrifice by the church. Subaru tells her that he does not know anything about that. When Subaru looks at her again, he suddenly sees an image of his mother in her, and then he gives her a dagger. He explains that the dagger is made of silver and that it can kill vampires like them if it is stabbed into the heart. Afterward, Yui goes back to her room and finds Leto waiting for her, but he suddenly grabs her hand and uses it to stab himself in the chest. Leto then tells her that he is no longer interested in drinking her blood. Later that night, Yui wakes up because of the loud noises from a heavy storm, and when she looks out the window, she sees the same mysterious girl she saw before. The girl slowly turns around to look directly at Yui, and right at that moment Yui suddenly faints. Afterward, Yui finds herself walking through a strange underground alley, and it feels like she is not in full control of her own body. When she finally regains consciousness, she realizes she is now standing on the ground where several children are playing together. It turns out those children are actually Ayato and the others when they were young, and they are trying to catch some bats. However, Kanado begins to cry loudly because the bat he managed to grab escapes from his hands and flies away. Leto comforts him by saying not to cry since they can always try to catch more bats again, and Ayato agrees, telling Kanado that he will catch them for him so he doesn't have to be sad anymore. They run off again, but then Ayato suddenly hears his name being called by the same woman Yui saw earlier. The woman walks up to him, wondering if this is where he has been hiding, and tells him to come with her right away. Yui starts to wonder if this woman is the same one she saw before in the garden. The woman tells Ayato that he has to return inside and continue his studies, but Ayato refuses, saying that all he ever does is study and he is tired of it. She raises her voice at him and asks how many times she has to remind him that he is the chosen successor and demands if he even understands what that title means. She then orders him to say out loud what he is supposed to do. With his head lowered, Ayato quietly answers that he must become number one and must grow to be better than everyone else. Later, Yui sees Reiji together with his mother outside, and Reiji looks focused as he is studying something carefully. Just then, Shu shows up holding a small puppy and tells his mother that a friend gave it to him, but his mother quickly tells him to let the puppy go. She reminds Shu that he is the eldest son and therefore the next head of the family, which means he needs to learn how to act properly and carry himself with dignity at all times. After this, Yui walks back toward the mansion and spots Subaru staring up at a woman standing in the window. Soon after, Yui once again sees Ayato's mother, this time together with Richter, and he calls her by the name of Cordelia. He kisses her hand and Cordelia tells him that she would like him to always remain by her side just so he can whisper his sweet words to her. Yui then notices Ayato watching them from nearby, and his face is filled with anger as he stares at them. Just then, Yui wakes up in present and finds Ayato in the underground alley. Yui then asks him what is behind that door beside them, but Ayato tells her that she doesn't need to know about it, but then Leto also arrives. Yui tries to run away but she is trapped, so Ayato quickly bites her neck and drinks her blood. Yui tells Ayato that her chest is hurting, but it's Leto's turn, so he gets on his knees and bites her leg. Later, Yui finds Leto sitting at the piano and playing, but she interrupts him by asking about the woman in the purple dress. Leto suddenly stops playing, and Yui explains that the woman is a beautiful lady with long hair. At that moment, Kanado appears and asks her why she would want to know something like that. Yui then notices both Kanado and Ayato standing behind Leto. Ayato narrows his eyes and asks her what she is doing in this room. Yui looks at Ayato and Kanado and asks them directly to tell her what their mother's name was. After hearing her question, all of them look sad for a moment, but then Ayato finally answers and reveals that her name was Cordelia. Right after this, a flashback appears showing Cordelia injured inside the mansion, with Ayato standing in front of her while his body is covered in blood. Ayato licks his lips and says that her blood tastes delicious and he wants even more. Cordelia looks terrified and tries to run away, but she is already losing too much blood. Afterward, she stumbles into Leto's piano room and tells him that Ayato is torturing her, but Leto doesn't act surprised and replies that it was bound to happen sooner or later. She then orders him to help her. Suddenly, a loud noise echoes, and Cordelia panics, saying that Ayato has come to kill her. Later, Leto brings Cordelia to the same messy room, where she sits by the window and asks if he has driven Ayato away. Leto answers that he did. Then he asks if she loves him more than anyone else, and Cordelia softly tells him that she does. But Leto suddenly pushes her off the balcony, and she falls into the flowers below. Afterward, Kanado walks up to Cordelia's body and notices a hole in her chest. He tries to wake her, but when he realizes she is dead and cold, he tries to warm her body by burning it with candles. Back in the present, Yui tries to run away, exhausted from everything, but Subaru appears in front of her and says she should have escaped when she had the chance. Yui then asks if he knew what the triplets did to their mother, and he asks if he really did and starts walking away. Yui quickly asks why he gave her that knife and stands up, telling him to wait. When she reaches out to grab his arm, he suddenly turns around and warns her not to touch him. He tells her that if she comes even one step closer, he will destroy her. Subaru then punches the flower bushes in anger, and when Yui sees this, she remembers Subaru's past, where he was staring at a woman in the tower. Yui asks Subaru if the woman in the tower was his mother, but Subaru looks shocked and asks how she knew that. After a moment, Subaru pulls her into his arms and hugs her tightly before biting her neck to drink her blood, saying that it tastes sweet. He then reveals that the reason he gave her the knife was because he wanted her to stab him. Later that night, Yui walks outside and finds a strange place where Shu is sitting and reading a book. She apologizes for disturbing him and says that something feels wrong with her lately as she keeps hearing a woman's voice even though no one is there. Shu then tells her to come closer. When she does, he suddenly throws his book aside and pushes her down onto the bench. He touches her face, and Yui asks what he's doing and begs him to let her go. Shu only chuckles as he brushes her neck and then bites her. Right away, he notices that her blood tastes different and says the awakening is close. Yui looks confused, but Shu explains that her blood has started to change. He wipes the blood from her neck with his thumb, then licks it and says it feels hot and ready to burst out of her. He leans closer to bite her again, but Yui quickly pushes him away, trying to escape. Shu instantly grabs her hand before she can move and tells her that her neck is not the only place with blood. He explains that fresh and new blood also flows strongly through her wrists, and he says he can tell because even through her skin the smell is so good. Shu warns her not to move, then bites her wrist, and while drinking, he asks if this is the awakening. After that, he says that women are scary because even though he is trying to hold himself back, he feels so worked up, and he admits she is impressive for making him feel this way. He leans in like he will bite her again, but Yui quickly asks what he means by awakening. Shu then tells her that no sacrificial bride has ever lived long enough to reach the point of awakening. Afterward, Shu tells her about sacrificial bride and when she remembers what the brothers said to her back when she first arrived at the mansion. She then asks Shu what the real reason is for her being here and if her father has some kind of strong connection with the Sakamaki family. Shu gets up from the bench and says that he will answer her questions, which makes Yui even more confused. Then Shu says that he knows someone else is in the church with them. A voice speaks, and it is Richter, saying that Shu has always been sharp and quick to notice things. Richter walks into the church, and Yui looks at him and asks who he is. Shu tells her that this man is Richter, their uncle. Hearing this, Yui suddenly remembers seeing him once before in the past when he was talking with Cordelia. Shu then picks up his music book and leaves without saying more. Richter turns to Yui and tells her to forgive the rude behavior of his nephews because even though he tries to straighten them out, they never seem to learn. He then looks at her seriously and asks what it is that she wants to know. Yui explains that she wants to understand why she was brought here, why she was chosen, and how her father was tied to the history of sacrificial brides. Richter explains to Yui that the reason she came to this house is because she is at the right age to be a bride, and also because out of all mortals, she was the easiest one for them to take. After saying this, he tells her that he has been waiting a long time for this exact moment to finally come, and he calls for her to come closer to him. Suddenly the wind begins to blow around the church and Yui wonders what is happening as her heart starts to pound hard inside her chest again. Richter then walks straight to Cordelia and guides her toward the hidden place behind the bookcase, where the sight of Cordelia's bloodstained dress is revealed. Richter tells her that she does not need to hesitate because this dress already belongs to her. Yui reaches out to touch the white rose nearby, but as soon as she does, the petals turn red and the flower is covered in blood. At that moment, Cordelia looks down at her own bloodstained hand and begins to laugh. After this, Cordelia tells Richter that everything happening now reminds her of the good old days, but then Richter calls her his sister-in-law. Cordelia puts her finger on his lips and says that he used those words on purpose, knowing it would bother her. Richter answers that no matter what she says, she was still his brother's wife, and he is a man who once fought his own brother over her and ended up losing. He explains that in order to try and forget her, he spent hundreds of years wandering the world, but Cordelia responds that he does not have to forget her at all and that he does not owe Karl-Heinz anything. At that moment, Ayato suddenly arrives and gets angry when he sees that Cordelia has returned. Cordelia tells Richter to explain to Ayato why she is standing there. Then Cordelia, who is now using Yui's body, says that she needs rest because she is not used to being inside this body, and she adds that Yui should not even still be conscious. After this, there is a flashback showing the day Cordelia died and Richter is standing right beside her during her final moments. Cordelia asks him to cut out her heart and place it inside another body so that she can live again. Richter then takes hold of his sword, raises it, and slashes her chest to remove her heart, while at the same time making a promise that he will bring her back to life one day. Returning to the present time, Ayato finally realizes the truth that Richter placed Cordelia's heart inside Yui's body. Richter tells him that Yui still exists for now, but once the awakening is complete, her soul will be destroyed forever and only Cordelia will remain in her place. Later, Ayato goes to a nearby river to meet Cordelia, who asks Ayato if he would kill her. Ayato tells Cordelia that he used to be a terrible swimmer in the past, but now he is able to swim well, and Cordelia replies that it is all thanks to her influence. Suddenly, Ayato pushes her into the river, and Cordelia wonders for a moment if Yui even knows how to swim in the first place. Ayato turns to walk away, but then he suddenly hears Yui's voice calling out. Right after that, he rushes back and pulls Yui's body out of the water, and it is revealed that Yui has taken back control over herself. Yui looks at him in confusion and asks why she is wearing such a strange dress. Ayato tells her to stay quiet, then leans closer to her and bites her neck because he cannot hold back his craving for her blood. Just as Ayato is about to kiss her, Leto and Kanado appear and they both say that they also want to taste Yui's blood for themselves. Just then, Yui becomes terrified and runs off into the forest while Ayato holds Leto and Kanado back to stop them from chasing after her. Yui makes her way back to the mansion as fast as she can and grabs Subaru's knife for protection. However, Subaru suddenly appears and grabs her from behind, saying he could smell the sweet scent of her blood. He sinks his teeth into her neck and tells her that her blood is so irresistible that he cannot control himself. When Yui drops the knife to the floor, Subaru notices and asks if she has finally become afraid of all of them now. After that, Subaru walks away, leaving her shaken, and then Richter arrives, telling Yui that her blood is driving the vampires insane. After this, Cordelia takes control of Yui's body again, and she begins having a strange and unsettling conversation with Richter until Reiji suddenly arrives. When she notices him, Cordelia comments that if Reiji were not so tough and serious, he would look almost exactly like Carl back when she first met him. Reiji tells her not to bring up his father's name without a reason, and then he quickly steps closer to where she is. Cordelia smiles and says that her wish is to stay full of life as long as she can, and the thing she hates the most is feeling bored. Reiji responds that boredom does not fit her personality, but death certainly does. Cordelia laughs a little and asks him to come and sit closer beside her. When Reiji refuses to move, she tells him that he is acting defensive just like his mother, because he hides his real emotions and tries too hard to cover up how he truly feels inside. Cordelia tells Reiji that his mother never seemed to love him as much as she loved Shu, but Reiji realizes this is the same way Cordelia once turned his father, his brother, and even his uncle against each other. After this, Cordelia walks up closer to Reiji, pulls his head near hers, and says that his eyes look exactly like Carl's. She hugs him tightly and says that the reason she came back to life was so she could get her revenge on Carl. Cordelia then starts kissing Reiji and says that she is interested in him now, but Reiji asks what she plans to do about Richter. Cordelia answers that Richter does not object to anything she decides, no matter what it is. She then asks Reiji to give her pleasure, but Reiji refuses and says that he is going to pass on that, the same way people swipe past goth girls on Tinder. Reiji tells Cordelia that he has no interest in corrupt women, which makes her furious, and she slaps him hard across the face. At that moment, Leto and Kanado walk in, and Cordelia quickly compliments Kanado's sweet voice. Soon after, Subaru also arrives and says that none of them belong in this place. Subaru then loses his temper and charges at Richter, trying to attack him, but Richter moves smoothly and dodges the strike without much effort. Richter laughs and says that none of them are even close to being a match for him, but Shu replies that to Carl, Richter does not even count as a rival at all. Cordelia then takes Subaru's silver knife and hands it to Richter, telling him to use it to kill all of the vampire brothers. When Richter looks at the weapon, he realizes that with just one stab straight through the heart, this knife has the power to kill them completely. Richter asks Cordelia if she will swear to make him the next head of the family if he kills the others, and when she answers yes, Richter reminds her that this was already part of their deal back when he saved her from dying. He then calls her a fool and says that in her current state she is useless to him, and the only thing he really needs is her heart, because he wants to awaken Yui and make her completely his own. At that moment, Ayato shows up and declares that Yui belongs to him, but Richter grabs Cordelia and begins fighting Ayato with his sword. During the battle, Richter slashes Ayato's shoulder and injures him badly, and just as he raises his blade to finish Ayato off, Yui regains control of herself and manages to run away from Richter. Yui picks up Subaru's knife, holds it tightly, and stabs herself in desperation. When Richter sees this, he tries to reach into Yui's body to take the heart, but Ayato stabs Richter with his sword. After this, everyone starts to worry about whether Yui will disappear or not, but Ayato turns to Subaru and asks if he can pull the knife out of Yui's chest. Subaru tells him that he will take care of it himself, and then he grips the handle and pulls the knife out. At the same time, Richter is shown stumbling underground in a miserable condition, thinking to himself about whether he is going to perish or not. On the other hand, Ayato asks Subaru if there is any way to force Cordelia out of Yui's body, but Reiji quickly begins flipping through his books, searching for an answer or a solution. Later that night, Subaru walks outside and throws his knife away, while Richter sneaks into the same room where Cordelia was staying before. He reaches toward the blood-stained flower, trying to grab it, but Leto suddenly arrives and realizes that this is where Richter has been hiding Cordelia's dress the whole time. Sometime later, Yui finally regains her consciousness, and Shu quietly thinks to himself that the awakening has already begun. Kanado asks if there has ever been a case where a normal mortal woman awakened with the power of a vampire, but Shu replies that no vessel has ever survived the process long enough for it to happen. Ayato then speaks up and says that this situation is different because Yui has Cordelia's heart inside her. At the same time, Leto questions Richter about why he keeps returning to their house, warning him that the dress he has is dangerous. Leto also asks if Richter's plan was to rise up against Carl once he gained the power of the sacrificial bride. Richter says that the truth is not as simple as Leto thinks it is. Meanwhile, Reiji arrives holding a remedy that he claims can kill Cordelia once and for all, but the others point out that it is only an incomplete remedy and may not work the way it should. However, Reiji explains that the remedy cannot work unless it includes a piece of Cordelia, and right then Kanado rips open his teddy bear and pulls out a small bottle that holds part of Cordelia. Reiji takes it, mixes it with his remedy and finally completes it. At the same time, Leto grabs a burning candle and throws it onto Richter, and Richter burns to death along with Cordelia's dress. Meanwhile, Ayato takes the finished remedy into his mouth and transfers it into Yui's body through a kiss. After this, Yui slowly opens her eyes and wakes up, and everyone around her smiles with relief to see that she is finally back again. Later that night, Ayato returns Yui's pendant to her, placing it in her hands. Deep inside a strange forest, two brothers whisper to each other that their time for vengeance has finally come. Meanwhile, Yui is asleep under a tree when she suddenly hears a voice calling her Eve. She wakes up and starts wandering around the mysterious place, trying to find who is speaking to her. The voice keeps saying that the time has come, but Yui is still confused and doesn't know who is calling her. Then the dream fades away, and Yui opens her eyes to see that she is back in her bedroom. To her shock, Ayato, Kanado, and Leto are already there, waiting for her so they can suck her blood. Ayato tells Yui that he's been feeling parched ever since he woke up and demands to drink from her. Yui tries to protest, but Kanado cuts her off and warns Ayato that he won't forgive him if he keeps Yui all to himself. Leto nods in agreement with Kanado, then moves behind Yui, gently stroking her arm up to her shoulders as he smiles and says her blood belongs to all of them. Later, they are all on their way to school and Reiji scolds Ayato and the others because they went after Yui in the morning when they should not have done that. Kanado says that he thinks he should have gone with them too, but Shu gets annoyed and tells everyone to be quiet since all their noise is messing up the music. After that, Ayato moves close to Yui and tells her that he wants to suck her blood again, but Reiji steps in and tells him to hold himself back and not do it right now. Suddenly, the car goes out of control while driving and crashes into a tree. Right after that it bursts into flames, but luckily everyone makes it out safely without getting hurt and they stand there wondering what really just happened. Yui feels very scared and shaken from the accident as Ayato places her down on the ground and he says she is heavy, while Yui quickly thanks him for saving her. Ayato tells her that it was nothing important, because if she had died then he would not be able to drink her blood anymore. Suddenly, Leto notices some guys standing on the cliff and he says that it must be their doing and points out that there are 4 of them up there. Ayato steps forward and asks them directly who they are, but they do not give any clear reply and instead only say the word Eve before disappearing into thin air. Leto mentions that those guys seem to be just like them, but Reiji disagrees and says that they do not appear to be purebloods, which makes everyone think more about who they could really be. At the same time, Yui suddenly remembers that she has heard that same voice before in one of her dreams, which makes her feel even more uneasy. Later that night, Yui goes down to the ground to look for some flowers, but once again she hears someone calling her by the name Eve, and when she hears it, she quickly tries to run away, but a blonde-haired guy suddenly shows up out of nowhere and blocks her path. Yui asks him who he is, but before she can do much, she tries to run away again and the other boys from before appearing to stop her from escaping. After that, Yui tries one more time to get away, but then another guy slowly comes out of the mist, and he also calls her Eve while telling her that he has come there for her. In that moment, she realizes that these are the same guys she saw standing on the cliff the other day. Afterward, Yui once again falls into that same strange dream where someone keeps calling her by the name Eve, but this time when she suddenly wakes up, she finds herself in a completely different place. She turns around and is startled when she notices a guy sitting on a chair while reading a book. Yui quickly starts asking him where she is along with many more questions all at once, but the other guy grows annoyed and tells her to stay quiet. 2 other guys arrive and one of them looks straight at Yui and asks her if she likes pain, which terrifies her. After that tense moment, they finally introduce themselves properly and Yui learns that the blonde-haired guy is named Ko while the others are Yuma, Azusa, and Ruki, and together they all claim to be brothers. Ko then explains to her that from now on she is going to live with them inside their mansion, which shocks Yui even more and leaves her scared of what will happen next. However, Yui says that she cannot stay here and she quickly tries to run away, but Ruki stops her and asks if she really wants to go back to the Sakamaki mansion. Ruki explains that to the Sakamakis she was nothing more than a vampire toy that they only used, which makes Yui upset and angry. She tells them that they are also vampires, so wouldn't that make them the same as the Sakamakis, but this makes Ruki furious and he snaps at her and tells her not to compare them with the others. He says that they have more self-control than the Sakamakis, but Yui says that she does not believe them. This makes Ko annoyed and he says that they do not care if she believes them or not, and Ruki agrees by saying that Ko is right because their plan is already about her blood as Eve. Yui then starts remembering her dreams and with doubt she asks if she really is Eve. Azusa answers right away and says that she is definitely Eve, but Yui says that she is not, and Yuma yells at her loudly and tells her to stop fighting and just do as they say. Ruki suddenly grabs Yui by the chin and looks straight into her eyes. He explains that because she has the blood of Eve, she will one day be able to find an Adam. After saying this, he takes Yui to her room and tells her that from now on she is going to live with them. Meanwhile, Ayato is getting worried because they cannot find Yui anywhere, but Shu, who looks calm as always, tells the others to just leave her alone because she will come back by herself sooner or later. On the other side, Yui tries to open the door to her room, and when it finally unlocks, she escapes and runs down the stairs as fast as she can, her heart racing. She pushes open another door and at last she sees what looks like the exit. Yui falls to the ground in pain. Afterward, Ruki tells her that if she wants to run, she can, but only punishment awaits if she does. Yui then sees a picture on a desk, but Ruki places it away and walks toward Yui. Afterward, Ruki grabs Yui and starts drinking her blood, which he finds sweet. Yui manages to push him away and rushes towards leaving the room, but he catches her again and bites her neck to drink the blood. Afterward, Yui wakes up and finds herself lying back in her bedroom inside the Mukami Mansion. She decides to head downstairs, and while walking she hears shouting coming from a room. When she enters the room, she sees all of the brothers already sitting there and eating their food together. Ruki notices Yui right away and tells her to come over and have dinner since he prepared a separate plate just for her. As Yui begins to eat, she looks at Ruki and asks if he really made all the food himself, and he answers yes. When Yui asks him why she has to hurry, Ko explains that it is because they are going to school soon. Yui perks up and says excitedly that she wants to go too, but the brothers tell her that she is wrong to think that. Ko tells Yui that she must stay in the mansion today with Azusa, who will be the one watching over her. Later on, everyone else leaves for school except Azusa, and Yui returns to another room by herself, but then Azusa appears and tells her to come to his room because he wants to show her something. Then, all of a sudden, he asks Yui if she likes him and if she can hit him, but Yui says she can't do something like that. When she says this, Azusa looks sad and says it's too bad, and then asks if she hates him, but Yui quickly tells him it's not like that. Azusa steps closer and corners her against the wall, telling her that he doesn't hate her and that their scents are the same, which makes Yui even more nervous. After that, he changes the subject and asks her if she notices the knife in his hand. He tells her that he just sharpened it today and asks her to help test how sharp it is by letting him cut her, but Yui refuses right away. Azusa then says that she can cut him instead and he pushes the knife into her hands. He grabs her hand tightly and forces her to hold the knife against him, and even though Yui tries her best not to do it, the blade slips and ends up cutting Azusa's hand. Afterward, there is a flashback of Azusa as a child, where a group of kids are beating him up again and again. Even though he is covered in pain, Azusa starts laughing and tells them to keep hitting him more, but the kids only see him as a clown and finally decide to walk away, leaving him behind. Back in the present, Azusa suddenly slams Yui against the wall and sinks his teeth into her neck because he wants to drink her blood. While biting her, Azusa tells her that her blood is without a doubt the blood of Eve and says how lucky she is to have something so rare inside of her. Yui struggles and protests that she is not Eve, but Azusa only says that he will drink more and then asks her if she feels happy about it. When Yui cries out that it hurts, Azusa replies that the greater the pain is, the better it feels, and he leans down and bites into her shoulder this time. Afterward, Yui starts to feel dizzy and weak from the loss of blood, and just then Yuma appears and orders Azusa to stop what he is doing. Later, Azusa looks at the cuts and wounds on his own body and wonders to himself if he can become Adam. The next day, Yui takes a bath and thinks to herself about what Azusa told her earlier, that her blood is supposed to be the blood of some Eve, and the thought makes her feel nervous and confused. Just then, Yuma suddenly shows up in her bathroom without warning, and Yui screams loudly when she sees him there. Shocked, she asks him why he is in her bathroom, and Yuma answers that he came because he wanted to see her, and then he grabs her hand and tries to pull her away. Yui quickly says that she cannot go anywhere while she is still exposed, but Yuma tells her that is the fun part, which makes Yui angry. Later, Yui walks outside into the garden and looks around at all the vegetables growing there, but Yuma appears again and tells her that this garden belongs to him. After that, he starts harvesting the vegetables one by one and places them into Yui's basket, and she finds them delicious. Curious, Yui asks him why he spends time growing vegetables at all, and Yuma explains that it is because if they ever get stuck somewhere without food, they can survive on these for a while. Yui then says that she thought vampires could live without food, but Yuma tells her that he personally likes eating, which is why he grows them. Yuma then tells Yui that they were once humans too, which surprises her, and he goes on to explain that back when he used to roam around the slums, he would be so hungry that he felt happy just to wolf down a single tomato. When Yui hears this, she asks him if he really lived in the slums, and Yuma nods and says that he used to live there before he met Ruki and the others. He adds that during that time his friends were all killed, and if he had not met someone afterward, he would not even be alive today. Curious, Yui asks him who the person was that he met, but instead of answering, Yuma pushes a vegetable into her mouth and tells her to stop asking so many questions. After that, Yuma suddenly grabs her and sinks his teeth into her neck to suck her blood, and Yui struggles to escape, but before she can get away, Yuma reaches out and grabs both of her hands tightly so that she cannot move. Yuma tells Yui not to run away from him, and before she can react, he slams her against the glass wall of the greenhouse and continues sucking her blood, leaving her weak and struggling. After that, there is a flashback of Yuma as a small boy, sitting alone in the street with his body covered in bruises, looking hopeless, until another boy comes up to him and asks him to come with them. Back in the present, Yui slowly wakes up, but just as she tries to sit up, Yuma picks something up and places it into his own mouth first. He then leans down closer to her and passes the cube into her mouth through a kiss, surprising her. He tells Yui to eat it because he is sharing something valuable with her, but without saying much more, Yuma stands up and begins walking away, leaving her behind. Not long after, Yui drifts off again and finds herself in the same dream, where she is sitting quietly beneath the tree. The dream ends, and Ruki asks Yuma about the progress and if there are any signs of the awakening. Later, Yui goes back to her room and starts brushing her teeth like usual, but then Ko shows up with a bunch of flowers in his hands. He says they are a gift and a sign of their friendship. He asks her if she likes them, and when she says yes, he tells her to show how thankful she is too. After that, Ko puts his arms around her waist and pulls her closer to him. He says that life is all about give and take. Yui quickly pushes him away, and she thinks maybe he's feeling hurt, so she tells him she's sorry. All of a sudden, Ko's mood changes, and he asks her who she thinks she really is. Then he takes the flowers away from her and starts tearing the roses apart right in front of her face. He says the flowers are his, so he can do whatever he wants with them. He throws the ruined roses to the side and suddenly grabs Yui by the neck. He tells her that she took his kindness for granted and warns her not to act like she's something special. Then he lets go of her neck, making Yui fall to the floor, and Ko bites her neck, starting to suck her blood. Yui tries to fight back, But no matter how hard she struggles, it doesn't work. Ko finally stops and says her blood is way too addicting. He tells her that he won't kill her yet, not until he becomes Adam. Then he goes back to sucking her blood again, but Yui can't move or do anything and she slowly loses consciousness. Later, she sees the same dream again, but this time she wakes up on the floor in her room. After that, she walks to the living room and sees the rest of the Mukami brothers. She asks where Ko is and Ruki wonders if she needs something from him, but Yui says it's nothing important, and Yuma tells her that Ko is working. Azusa asks Yui if she's worried about Ko, but she tells him that she's only curious about where he is. After that, Yui goes to the dining room to get herself a glass of water, and while she drinks, she starts to wonder what kind of work Ko is actually doing. Later on, as she heads back to her room, the front gate opens and Ko walks in, completely soaked from the rain. He tells Yui to come with him to his room. Once there, he asks her to help him take off his shirt. As Yui begins to unbutton his shirt, she asks what his work really is. Ko seems a little surprised by her question and makes a comment about how she doesn't know much about the outside world. Then, he tells her that he works as an idol and thanks her for helping with his buttons. When he turns around to pull off his shirt, Yui notices several scars on his back. After that, Ko begins to tell Yui about his past. He says that he always dreamed of reaching the sky, but he could only do that by leaving the manhole he used to live in. He finally managed to get out, but he ended up in an orphanage where things got even worse. There, he was put up for sale to rich aristocrats who used him for their own entertainment. In return, he was given fancy clothes and food, but the pain he went through was terrible. The abuse was so bad that his body never had a chance to heal, which is why he has so many scars. When Yui hears this, she feels heartbroken and asks how he can talk in such a cheerful way about something so sad. After talking, Ko tells Yui to sleep with him. Later that night, Ko struggles to fall asleep and starts having nightmares about everything he went through in the past, tossing and turning as the memories won't leave him alone. Afterward, Yui gets back to her room and thinks about how it's time for everyone to head out soon. Suddenly, Ruki arrives at her room and tells her to wear school uniform, and she asks if she is allowed to go to school, but he doesn't reply and just walks away. Afterward, she changes her clothes and goes to school. Later at school, everyone leaves Yui in the school so she can go back to school, but then she runs into Reiji. He says that they thought she disappeared, but she tells him that these people named Murakamis took her in, but Reiji says that he has no interest in where she is and who she is with. Just then, Leto arrives and says that she just tossed them aside to go have fun with others. Kanado also says that she is with someone who he thinks is not entirely real vampires. Leto changes the subject by telling Yui that someone has been searching for her this entire time. Kanado asks Leto if he's referring to Ayato, and he says he's correct. Reiji says that Ayato didn't even come to school, and Leto tells Yui that she is lucky that Ayato ditched. Just as Yui is about to ask how Ayato is, the three Sakamakis have already disappeared. Afterward, Yui is walking through the school when she notices Ko surrounded by a group of girls, and she realizes right away that he must be very popular here. At that moment, Subaru shows up and grabs her hand tightly before pulling her away. Subaru drags Yui up to the school roof and suddenly slams her against the fence. He demands to know if this is what she wanted and if she chose to be with the Mukami brothers. Yui tries to speak, but no words leave her mouth, and she stays silent. This silence annoys Subaru until another voice breaks in, asking Yui why she is not giving an answer. Subaru turns around and sees Ko standing behind them. Ko then wraps his arms around Yui from behind and tells Subaru that if he truly wants her, then he should hurry and take her away from him. But when Subaru does not move, Ko smirks and says that he will take Yui himself, then tells her that they are leaving together. Ko takes Yui's hand and begins walking away with her, but Subaru suddenly grabs her arm and forcefully gets her back toward him. He pulls down the left side of her school uniform and drinks her blood. Just then, Ko asks Subaru why he did not just do that from the very beginning, but Subaru snaps back that it was only a joke. He then let go of Yui, making her collapse to the ground, and he turns away and leaves. Once Subaru is gone, Ko kneels down and grabs Yui, looking closely at the bite marks. He tells her that he will disinfect the wound by biting her in the exact same spot where Subaru already bit her. Ko adds that even though Subaru has marked her, he himself will keep drinking her blood until she forgets about it. Yui cries out for him to stop and begins to struggle, but Ko grabs her other hand and pins it down to the ground. The next day, Yui and Yuma are busy harvesting some vegetables in the garden when Yuma asks Yui about a neat from Sakamaki's. However, Yui doesn't understand what he means, so he says that the guy who sleeps all the time, so Yui realizes that he is talking about Shu. Yui says that he is the oldest of the Sakamaki brothers, but Yuma calls her stupid and says that he already knows about that. Yui then says that Shu doesn't speak much and he listens to music most of the time, which makes Yuma think that he is a NEET. Meanwhile, Ruki asks others if there is any sign of awakening in Yui, but they say that there are none. Ko points out that they're always sucking Yui's blood and he asks Ruki if what they're doing is not enough. Afterward, we get a flashback of Ruki when he was running through the forest at night with his brothers. They have just escaped from the orphanage. He turns around and tells them that they can't stop, they have to keep going. Eventually, Ruki gets caught by some people who then tell Ruki that he will burn him with an object as punishment, so that he won't ever make that mistake again. Ruki is then heard screaming as he gets burned. Sometime later, Ruki is still lying on the ground and close to death when a mysterious person appears before him. The person says something and he offers his hand to Ruki, which he happily accepts. Back to the present, Ruki tells everyone that he gave them a chance, but at this rate they won't live up to that guy's expectations. Later at school, Yui gets dizzy as she walks stairs, but Yuma manages to catch her before she falls. Afterward, Yuma is carrying Yui in his arms and Yui asks him where they are going, but Yuma replies that he does not know and tells her to stay quiet while she is being carried. As they turn the corner, they come across Shu, who is lying down and sleeping in the corridor. Yuma looks annoyed and tells Shu to move out of the way, but Shu completely ignores him. Yuma then yells at Shu again to move and slams his foot hard against the wall right next to Shu's head. This sudden noise wakes Shu up, and when he notices Yui, he comments that she has already jumped to another man when he thought she had disappeared. Hearing this, Yuma becomes angry and suddenly bites into Yui to suck her blood, which causes Shu to get irritated as well, so he simply leaves and walks away. Afterward, a flashback shows Shu when he is younger, walking in the forest, where a boy comes up to him and asks if he is lost. The boy says Shu does not look like a bad person and hands him an apple to eat. The boy then introduces himself as Edgar. Returning to the present, Reiji is shown watching from a distance. He comments to himself that he never thought Yuma would still be alive, and he wonders how Yuma even turned into a vampire. Meanwhile, Yui goes back to the Mukami Mansion and is heading toward her room when she suddenly bumps into Ruki in the hallway. Afterward, Ruki grabs her arm and pulls her close to him. Yui flinches nervously as Ruki leans toward her neck, but he suddenly stops and freezes in place. He then pulls back and Yui asks him if something is wrong, but as Ruki remains silent, then finally let go of her and walks away without another word. Later, Azusa shows up at the dining room where everyone is fighting over the food because they are all so hungry, but when Ko notices him, he asks if Ruki is not coming. Azusa answers that he tried to bring him along, but Ruki refused to come. Ko and Yuma then share their thoughts about Ruki's strange behavior recently, and Azusa quietly says that something must have happened to him. Hearing this, Yui suddenly remembers how Ruki froze up earlier when he tried to drink her blood. Later on, Yui finishes putting on her school uniform, and just as she is about to leave, Ruki suddenly appears in front of her and forcefully grabs her hand. Yui jumps in surprise, and Ruki orders her to come with him. As he pulls her down the hallway, Yui desperately asks where he is taking her, but he only tells her to stay quiet while roughly dragging her into a small room. He pushes his fangs deeper into her neck while drinking her blood, and this makes Yui fall to the ground right away. When Ruki sees this, he gasps in shock and runs out of the room at once. Outside the door, his brothers stop him and ask why he is acting like this. As he keeps walking, Ruki tells them that they have been too soft on Yui, so now she must be treated like livestock, because they will need more of her blood for the sake of Adam. 1 week later, everyone gathers together, and Ko asks Ruki how long he plans to keep Yui locked inside the room, saying that it has already been a whole week. Ruki does not answer his question and instead says that they must drink more of her blood if they want to bring out the awakening. Yuma speaks up, saying they do not have to keep Yui locked up just for that, but Ruki reminds him about the promise they made with that man. Then Azusa tells Ruki that they will face trouble if Yui dies, but Ruki does not listen and simply walks away. After Ruki leaves, his brothers each share their thoughts, saying that this behavior does not seem like him at all. At the same time, Yui sits quietly inside the room where Ruki has locked her away. She wonders to herself why things have turned out this way, but her thoughts suddenly stop when Ayato suddenly shows up in the room. He tells her that he has finally found her and complains about all the trouble she has caused him. He then grabs Yui tightly and pulls her toward him, saying that she will come back with him right now. Afterward, Ayato becomes angry and accuses her of siding with the Mukamis, reminding her that she belongs only to him and is nothing more than his food. In another place, Ayato pushes Yui hard against a tree in the forest and demands that she let him drink her blood. Yui tries to say something, but he cuts her off and tells her that he has already reached his limit. He pulls her hair back and is just about to sink his teeth into her neck, when he suddenly notices the faint bruised fang marks already there. This sight shocks Ayato, and he quickly pulls down the right side of Yui's shirt, asking her on how much blood the Mukamis have already taken from her. Later on, Yui wakes up and notices that she's now in the Mukami Mansion. She wonders what Ayato did to her the night before. Just then, Leto appears and says she looks tired, probably because Ayato drank so much of her blood yesterday. He also tells her that he missed her a lot and now plans to enjoy himself fully. After that, Leto bites her leg and starts sucking her blood, but then pauses when he senses something different about her. Right at that moment, Reiji walks in and tells Leto to stop because he wants to ask Yui a few things. Later, Yui makes her way to the living room where Reiji is already waiting. He asks her to tell him what she knows about the Mukami brothers. Yui stays quiet and doesn't answer, which makes Reiji think that she's still just as useless as always. Yui suddenly remembers something and tells Reiji that the Mukami brothers used to call her Eve for some strange reason. When Reiji hears this, he seems to realize something and asks her if they also said anything about Adam. Yui nods and says that they did mention it. She then asks Reiji if he knows what that means, but he says that those former humans must be planning something. Reiji goes on to ask if she knows anything else about them, but Yui stays silent. This makes Reiji question her more, asking if she just allowed them to drink her blood whenever they felt like it without putting up a fight. However, Yui remembers that they needed her blood for some plan for someone, and hearing that Reiji remembers something. Reiji then asks Shu if he heard everything and asks if he got any news from their father, but Shu says he didn't and he might be planning something. After that, Yui asks Reiji again why all the Mukami brothers kept calling her Eve, but before he can answer, Kanado shows up. He gets upset with Yui for disappearing and showing up again whenever she feels like it. Right after that, Subaru arrives and asks her if she enjoyed her time living with the Mukamis. Leto joins in and says that they actually missed her when the Mukamis took her away. Then Ayato suddenly walks in and says he doesn't want to hear the Mukami brothers' names mentioned at all. Reiji cuts in and tells everyone that there isn't much time left before the next full moon. Leto shrugs and says it's just a lunar eclipse, but Reiji explains that this one is special because it happens at the same time in both the human world and the demon world. After the meeting ends, everyone goes back to their own rooms, but Yui chooses to head toward Reiji's room to see him. When she enters, Reiji asks if there is something she wants from him, but Yui once again asks him for the 100th time why she is being called Eve, what her blood has to do with all of this, and who the person is that the Mukami brothers keep talking about. Hearing her words, Reiji tells Yui that she does not need to know all of this and says that he doubts the brothers will even be able to complete their plan. Reiji then suddenly pushes Yui onto the desk and tells her that her blood is truly something very special before sinking his teeth into her arm to drink it. While tasting it, he says that the sweet scent of her blood is enough to drive anyone insane, and he admits that he does not want anyone else to ever take this precious blood away from him. Later that night, Shu sucks Yui's blood outside in the garden. He comments on how it seems as though she doesn't care whoever sucks her blood, but Yui protests that it hurts. Shu replies that he's purposely making it hurt, because the face she's making right now lures him in more, and he tells her that she's such a lewd woman. Yui tells him to let her go, but Shu replies that she should be more truthful. He tries to push her into saying that she actually wants him to drink her blood, and he says he will not stop until he feels satisfied with the amount he takes from her. Yui yells at Shu to stop, but instead he grabs her hand and bites her finger, calling her conceited while saying she is high-quality food. He adds that he has no intention of giving her up. Right after that, he moves closer and sinks his sharp fangs into her neck, saying that it is always troublesome to try and take something back once it has already been lost. Shu then tells Yui to stay with him and allow him to keep drinking her blood. Meanwhile, inside the Mukami Mansion, Ruki is still upset about the fact that he and his brothers are not able to become Adam, and he seems to regret letting Ayato take Yui away before. In the living room, Ko, Yuma, and Azusa keep questioning why Ruki did not try to stop Ayato from taking Yui with him. Their talk suddenly ends when the sound of glass breaking comes from the windows, and right after that, a group of wolves jumps inside the living room and surrounds the brothers. At the same time, Yui is standing by the window looking up at the stars when Kanado suddenly shows up beside her and asks what she is thinking about, which makes her startled. He angrily calls Yui a traitor and reminds her that she belongs only to him. He then asks why she went away with the Mukami brothers, and just when Yui tries to explain herself, he quickly interrupts, saying that she is his and he will never forgive her for it. Kanado bites her neck and proudly claims that he is the best when it comes to sucking blood. He orders Yui to always stay by his side before sinking his fangs into her again, but suddenly the door opens and Azusa rushes into the living room while breathing heavily. Kanado becomes irritated by Azusa's sudden appearance, but Azusa hurriedly tells Yui that Ruki is in danger. Yui quickly notices that Azusa looks slightly injured, so she asks what happened to him. She begins to step toward him, but Kanado grabs her hand tightly and stops her from moving closer. Azusa desperately tells Yui to move quickly, but Kanado screams at him to get out and leave them alone. He squeezes Yui's hand even harder, making Yui cry out for him to stop. Hearing her shout, Kanado freezes for a moment, and then says he understands. He tells Yui that she really is betraying him after all, and he suddenly begins to choke her with force. When Azusa sees Yui being strangled by Kanado, he quickly grabs Kanado's teddy that is resting on the mantelpiece and walks toward the fireplace. Azusa glances back at Kanado over his shoulder and quietly says that he will not let him stand in the way anymore. Kanado's eyes widen in shock when he notices Azusa holding his teddy in front of the fire. Azusa softly apologizes, and then suddenly throws Teddy into the flames. Kanado lets out a piercing scream at Azusa as his teddy is swallowed by fire. He pushes Azusa hard away from the fireplace and then collapses on his knees, staring helplessly as Teddy burns to ashes. Afterward, everyone gathers inside Ruki's room where he is lying on the bed hurt. Yui asks how this happens, so Azusa says it is because of him since Ruki was trying to protect him. Azusa remembers that the wolves suddenly attack them, and they all try to dodge, but one of the wolves almost kills Azusa as it stands in front of him. Right then, Ruki quickly appears in front of Azusa and takes the hit instead. Yui asks why the wolves attack, but Ko says they do not know the reason either. Later, they tell Yui that Ruki has been acting strange lately because he is under a lot of pressure from that plan. Azusa then says that the plan is called the Apple of Adam, and one of them will awaken as Adam. But Ko explains that to awaken Adam they need the blood of Eve, and Eve is Yui, so that is the reason they keep drinking her blood again and again in order to become Adam. However, he explains that Ruki starts to feel stressed because he does not notice any sign of the awakening. Everyone also says that Ruki is very determined and that he always puts the plan above anything else. They add that it is thanks to Ruki that all of them are together, since before that they spent most of their lives in pain, but when the four of them stayed side by side they always had happy times. They even share that Ruki used to teach them many things, and because of that they would always see him like their own older brother. Later that night, Yui quietly goes to Ruki's room where Ruki looks at her and asks what she is doing there, but Yui answers that she is worried about him and that is the reason she came to see him. However, Ruki becomes upset and asks Yui who she thinks she is to worry about someone like him. Yui replies that she has already heard about their plan, and she asks Ruki if he has been trying to become Adam. Ruki angrily tells her to be quiet, but Yui refuses to stop and instead tells him to say whatever he wants to say. Ruki then explains that nothing good will ever come or change just by talking with other people. After that, he tells Yui that none of them can ever become Adam and adds that only pureblood vampires are the ones who are given the right to awaken as Adam. After hearing this, Yui remembers Reiji's words about how their plan will not work. Ruki then admits that he does not have the courage to tell the others that they have been chasing something that will never bring results, but Yui gently tells him that everyone already knows. She adds that they also understand how he has been silently struggling all by himself because he cannot be Adam, and they even told her that he has always put them before himself. After that, Ruki suddenly pulls Yui into his arms and hugs her tightly. He tells her that she is his Eve and he's alone, and he asks her to stay with him forever, then leans down and begins to drink her blood. Afterward, the wolves attack both of the mansions but Ayato and the others manage to defeat them after a tough fight. Ayato then wonders where those wolves are coming from, so Reiji explains that since the attack happened on the night of the lunar eclipse, the wolves might be the last remaining survivors of the founders. Reiji continues by saying that if he remembers correctly, there were 2 survivors left. Kanado then asks who the wolves are really after. Reiji replies that since the wolves retreated without finishing them off, it clearly means they had another target that was more important. Ayato immediately realizes that their target might be Yui. However, Shu reminds him that the founders unleashed their full strength during a lunar eclipse, so it would be reckless to face them directly. But Ayato answers that no matter what, he has to go and save Yui. Meanwhile, Yui brings a glass of water for Ruki, who is finally starting to feel a little better. At that moment, Ayato suddenly shows up and comments that Yui really has the perfect luck of the devil. When Yui notices the scars on Ayato's body, she asks how he got them, and Ruki quickly answers that they must have also been attacked by the wolves. Ayato then explains that the founders are the ones behind everything, and they are after Yui because they want to take her blood. Ruki instantly says that if the founders are really after her blood, then it means they will arrive there soon, and once the right time comes during the eclipse, they will be at their full strength. Yui tells them to leave her alone because she does not want to bring any more trouble to any of them, but Ruki answers that it will actually be much easier for the founders to take her away if they abandon her like this. Ruki also explains that the powers of vampires become weaker during the lunar eclipse, so they all need to stay united and protect Yui together. Right after that, Ayato suddenly bites her and begins drinking her blood, which makes Ruki feel jealous, so he leans in and drinks from her as well. Afterward, everyone agrees that they must work together, and Ruki tells her that she is his Eve alone and that he will never let anyone else take her away. Who do you think is the most dangerous brother? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more anime recaps.